This is the APUSH History Epic Revolution video project by Keenan, Jeffrey, Nico, Danny, and Miles.
French and Indian War. The start of tensions between colonists and British began during the French and Indian War. Colonists wanted to fight independently, while British troops wanted to fight united. A man named William Pitt said if colonists fought with the British, then they wouldn't have to pay for the war. The British always thought that the colonists should have to foot the bill since it was on their home, but the colonists felt that it was not their war. What William Pitt said ended up being a lie, so the colonists were very angry. They felt it was not their war, so they shouldn't have to pay. The Albany Plan of Union was the colonists' first idea of becoming united for a cause. Representatives from all 13 colonies, besides Delaware and Georgia, came together to meet in Albany, New York. They created the Albany Congress, where they met to speak about fighting with the British for the French and Indian War. They drafted the Albany Plan of Union for this sole reason, and this helped us become what the country we are today. The Proclamation of 1773. The proclamation was pretty much the king saying that no colonists could expand westward. The colonists didn't like this, as they felt the manifest destiny, which was their view that they had a God-given right to expand into the west. It violated their rights, and they wanted land, but the king could not give the governors any rights to distribute the land between the colonists.
4 acts were put into place by the British colonies between 1764 and 1765. The Sugar, Stamp, Quartering, and Currency Act were all put into place. The Sugar Act put a tax on molasses and sugar. Stamp Act put a tax on all newspapers and letters, which had to have a stamp. The Quartering Act made it liable for any colonist to have to host a redcoat, and the Currency Act put a tax on all money. The Stamp Act Congress, published in 1765, was when the English believed that the colonists should pay for protecting the colonists in the French and Indian War. The colonists did not feel the same way, as they did not want the war in the first place. The Virginia Resolves, written by Patrick Henry, explained that no taxation without representation was needed. The Declaratory Act was the response to the Stamp Act, published by the King of England, in order to ease the colonists' frustration.
During the Revolutionary era, a cycle in the American colonies begins to form. First, British Parliament, in an attempt to pay for war reparations, passes a tax onto the American colonies. In response to the tax, colonists express their dislike for the act in various, sometimes extreme ways. Finally, the king repeals the previous act put in place as the cycle begins again with a new act. Beginning in 1767, a number of acts were passed by British Parliament known as the Townshend Revenue Acts. The purpose of these acts were to raise revenue in the colonies to pay for the salaries of officials that remained loyal to the British Crown. The Townshend Acts were met with resistance in the colonies, further aggravating colonists. An example of the colonists' response to the acts comes from John Dickinson and a series of letters written by him known as Letters from a Farmer in Pennsylvania. Dickinson promoted the belief that the colonies should control their own affairs and that the British attempts at taxing the colonies were unconstitutional. Seen by many as a key turning point in relations between the British and colonists, the Boston Massacre was an incident in which British soldiers fired upon civilian protesters, killing 5 and injuring 6. Before the event, which took place on March 5, 1770, there was much animosity between both the soldiers stationed in Massachusetts Bay and the colonists living there. The event was used heavily as propaganda by those in favor of colonial independence and further created hatred by colonists toward the British. The Gaspee Affair was an incident where a British ship was harassing colonist schooners off the coast. The Gaspee Affair was an incident where a British ship was harassing colonist schooners off the coast. The Sons of Liberty took a boat and baited the Gaspee into shallow waters. After the Gaspee was stranded, the Sons of Liberty burned it. They burnt the ship in retaliation for all the taxes and harassment from the British.
The Tea Act, the Boston Tea Party. The Tea Act was passed on May 10th, 1773. It would be the final event that would spark off the start of the Revolutionary War. It was designed to prop up the East India Company. It created a monopoly unfair to American tea merchants, taxed colonists on tea. Due to the disadvantages for unwealthy citizens, they boarded the ships carrying the tea, dressed as Native Americans, and threw the boxes of tea overboard. This is known as the Boston Tea Party. The Intolerable Acts. The Intolerable Acts was the American patriots' name for the series of punitive laws passed by the British Parliament in 1774 after the Boston Tea Party. They were meant to punish the Massachusetts colonists for the defiance in throwing a large tea shipment into the Boston harbor. The Boston Port Act. In response to the Boston Tea Party, it outlawed the use of the port of Boston. It closed the port of Boston to all ships no matter what business they were. Everyone suffered from the act because it applied to everyone, even if you were not involved in the acts of the Boston Tea Party. The Massachusetts Government Act. It was passed by the Parliament of Great Britain and became a law on May 20th, 1774. The act is one of the Intolerable Acts, or the Repressive Acts, or the Coercive Acts, designed to suppress dissent and restore order to the province of Massachusetts Bay. The Quebec Act. Massachusetts had been unique among the colonies in its ability to elect members of its executive council. This act took away the right and instead gave the king sole power to appoint and dismiss the council. The Administration of Justice Act. The Administration of Justice Act provided the British officials accused of capital crimes in the execution their duties and suppressing rights for collecting lawful taxes, and then Massachusetts could avoid hostile local juries. The First Continental Congress. It was a meeting of delegates from 12 of the 13 colonies that met on September 5th to October 26th of 1774 at the Carpenters Hall in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Early in the American Revolution, all colonies except Georgia sent delegates. The Second Continental Congress was a convention of delegates from the 13 colonies that started meeting in the summer of 1775 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and soon after the warfare in the American Revolution had begun.